I'm just saying. It's just always a Shaggy from Scooby-Doo looking Mother Hunchy that owns a gabillion dollars. Y'all know Lulu like right here, looking in my face lovingly like, mama. Anyway, by 1963, Phil was already a legend. He wrote his first #1 record, To Know Him Is to Love Him, when he was only 18 years old. And by the time he was 21, he was already a millionaire. He was only 22 when we met him, but he'd already made more top 10 records than most guys twice his age. And these were good records. When you listen to Zippity-Doo-Dah, Zippity-Day by Bob B. Sox, my oh my, what a wonderful day, and the Blue Jeans, or Uptown, or He's a Rebel, or any of the other records he made with the Crystals, you knew this guy could produce rock and roll music like no one else. Unfortunately, we had no idea how to get in touch with him. All we knew was that his record company had an office at 62nd and York Avenue, and that according to rumors we'd heard, Phil himself lived in the penthouse upstairs from his office. So, with no better plan, Estelle and I just picked up the phone and called over there. Who that remind you of, y'all? TT, right? Remember TT just was like, okay, well, the studio right there. Information, 411. Can you give me the number to the studio? And the lady, I think it was Rhonda, answered the phone. And then he worked his way into the fold through Rhonda. So with no better plan, Estelle and I just picked up the phone and called over there. We were sitting in our bedroom one afternoon when we decided to do it. We thought it would be best for Estelle to do the talking since she was the valedictorian. She picked up the big black phone from the nightstand between our beds and placed it on our pillow. Let me tell y'all something. You young folks, you will not understand this, but when you had a phone in your room, not even necessarily your own line. Now, if you had your own line, then that means your family was rich. Line meaning your own number. But if you had a phone and or a television in your own room and or a stereo in your own room, I'm telling you, that was a big fucking deal. Basically, all you need now is a smartphone. But back in the day, baby, I am telling you, I didn't have my own phone in my room. What I did have was a long extension cord for the phone that was in my mom's room. So I would pull the phone out of her room into my room and sit on the phone and talk all day. Then we got the number for Phil's records from Information. Remember I told you Information? That's 411. Do you ninjas even understand what the 411 is? Then she got the number from Information and she dialed it. When the secretary answered, Estelle sat up straight and said in her most grown-up manner, "Yes, I'd like to speak to Mr. Phil Spector." There was a pause, and then Estelle started to get this panicky look in her eyes. That's when I knew they were actually putting her through. I couldn't stand the suspense, so I buried my head under a pillow. But I still kept one ear out so I wouldn't miss anything. "Hello, Mr. Spector," my sister was saying. "My name is Estelle Bennett, and I'm one of the Ronettes." I couldn't believe she was actually talking to Phil Spector. Child. Why didn't I pick up the phone and just call Information? "Hi, can I have the number to the new edition? Hi, can I speak to the president? Hi, can I speak to Gary Gnu?" I pulled my head out of the pillow to look at her. If this was a joke, I swear I'd kill her, but it wasn't. She was really doing it. "Yes, we do," she said, and then paused. Agony. "Yes," and then another pause. More agony. What could this guy be saying? And then finally, "Oh, yes, we'll be there. Thank you, Mr. Spector." "Oh, okay, Phil." She hung up the phone and didn't say a word. "What?" I demanded, but Estelle just pulled a pillow over her head and started screaming into it. I couldn't take any more of the suspense, so I jumped up on her bed and started shouting, "What'd he say, Estelle? What'd he say?" Then she stopped screaming and slowly raised her head from the pillow. "Ronnie," she said, "we did it." "What? We did what?" I was frantic. She exclaimed. "We got through to Phil Spector. He wants to meet us." "Where?" I yelled. "When?" "At Murr Sound Studios," she screeched. "Tomorrow night." The next night, we went down to Murr or Myra Sound Studios at around 7 o'clock. Murr Sound was in the back of this real slummy building on West 47th Street. I remember because we were surprised that a millionaire would choose to record in such a shabby building. Don't forget this nigga is nuts, y'all. She don't know how nuts he is yet, but that's a little lure to me. Of course, we knew Phil was rich. We couldn't stop talking about it since we'd never even seen him. That was about all we knew about him. We were so naive that our only image of a rich man came from the television show The Millionaire. So all we did that whole day was joke about which one of us was going to marry the millionaire. When we finally walked into Murr Sound, everything was dark. We expected to find a room full of musicians, but the place was deserted. We were almost ready to turn around and leave when I glanced over to the corner and saw this little guy sitting behind a giant grand piano. You must be the Wrnedes. So Paul, at this point right now, I'm like, wait a minute, girl, this sounds like a great goop to me, because when you called there, how do you even know that that was Phil Spector? How you know that that's not Phil Spector perverted cousin, even though Phil Spector is a perversion? Well, that could have been anybody on that phone telling you to meet them anywhere. Yeah, Murr Studios, you go up to the Murr Studios, but you won't make it down, girl. You must be the Wrnedes, he said. So softly we had to lean in to hear him. Nadra and Estelle just looked at him like they couldn't believe this weird little man could be Phil Spector. But I knew who he was the instant I saw him. He wasn't what some people would call handsome. You got that right. But being as though he's a millionaire, he's what you call Facebook handsome, okay? Or Tesla handsome, okay? Because we know that Elon Musk is built like a barrel, okay? A barrel chest. That's what they call him when the people be real big in the chest. That's a real disease, y'all. What's the dude who on Facebook? I don't know, but the richest mother hunchies in the world be the most craziest looking men ever. It ain't never a fine millionaire, billionaire. It's always this dude over there, weird, Shaggy from Scooby-Doo looking mother hunchy with a big head and a scrawny body that, you know, thinks of the concept of Facebook. I don't know you like that, sir. I'm just saying. It's just always a Shaggy from Scooby-Doo looking mother hunchy that owns $1 billion. He wasn't what some people would call handsome, even though he was only 22. He already had a receding hairline and almost no chin. But he had great eyes. They looked deep, like he could see right into you. I remember just staring at him and thinking how cute he looked sitting there in the dark. I'm just going to have you sing a couple of songs, child. They did a little doo-wopping and Scooby-Doo-doing. And he was like, "Stop it. You got the sound that I want. That's it. I want to work with you girls." After we finished, it was obvious he didn't want us to leave. "Hey," he said, "you guys must be hungry." Now, I know this is long before the Latoya Jackson, but don't forget that ninja is a kidnapper. If he want to keep you there, he will keep you there. He like, "Can we have some sandwiches?" Girl, I don't know. I don't know, Mr. Spector. After we finished, it was obvious he didn't want us to leave. "Hey," he said, "you guys must be hungry." He didn't even wait for our answer. He just popped up from behind the piano and started walking towards the door. That's what kidnappers do. They don't wait for you to answer. "Come on," he said, waving after us like a Pied Piper. "Let's go get some pastrami on rye." We followed him out to the street where a long black limousine stood waiting at the curb. He bounced into the back seat. We followed right behind him. He seemed delighted by our company. Watch that nigga. When we got back to Mirror Sound, we all ate pastrami and potato salad while Phil played us a tape of his latest record. It was Darlene Love singing Today I Met the Boy I'm Going to Marry. You know what, guys? A couple of you told me that you all were interested in the Darlene Love book. Somebody, if you all are interested in putting that on the list, could you please send it to... Could you please send it to the P.O. box, please? Thank you. This thing right here, he is so spoiled. We about to go out. When we got back to Mirror Sound, we all ate pastrami and potato salad while Phil played us a tape of his latest record. It was Darlene Love singing Today I Met the Boy I'm Going to Marry. When the song ended, Phil ran back into the control room and played it again and again and again. It was so entertaining the way he ran all around the control room like Charlie Chaplin. He knew he had an audience and he did everything he could to keep us laughing. Girl, that's called foreshadowing to a maniac. Okay, pay attention. He's young, yes, but baby, he ain't just young. Phil Spector had some undiagnosed issues that his parents ain't take care of. I already knew I liked him that first day. And I knew he liked me too. I couldn't stop thinking that today I really had met the boy I was going to marry. Of course, before our relationship could go any further, personally or professionally, Phil had to meet my mother. We were still too young to sign our own contract, so getting my mother's consent meant everything. A week later, Phil showed up at our apartment at 405 West 149th Street, carrying flowers and a big bottle of expensive wine. Now, the thing about her mother ain't easily persuaded. We know this. Ooh, to have self-respect is a beautiful, glorious thing. You can always tell when a woman has a man in her life. Not even a, husband, but a brother who cares, a father who cares, an uncle who cares. You can always tell when somebody has a male figure that tries to guide a young woman properly. When I met my brother's wife, my sister-in-law, when I first met her, or one of the times that I met her, loved her, loved. Now that's one Virgo that I'll take a bullet for. That's my babe. When I first met her, I was like, oh, look at you, hoity-toity. Look at you with your old morals and dignity and stuff. You got a father, don't you? She was like, yes, I do have a father. I said, oh, it's so obvious, girl. You go, strong J. Carry on. Getting back to Phil Spector and Ronnie's mother. Ronnie's mother wasn't easily impressed. Listen, ninjas line up to impress me every single day. But for some reason, Phil Spector was able to woo Ronnie's mother, and she gave consent for Phil to work with her daughter. There's a problem, though. Remember, the girls are still signed to Coldplex. Phil Spector wanted the girls so bad that he was like, listen, don't worry about that. You know I'm a millionaire. Let's do this. I'm going to go on over there to Coldplex. Coldplex, how much would it be to get the girls out their contract? Coldplex told him. He was like, it's nothing. Bam, bam, bam. Okay, I'm the Phil Spector. Phil finally signed us in March of 1963. And once he had us, we became his obsession. What that remind you of? Bird the Gordy and the Supremes, right? Okay, I'll move forward. What would usually happen is Phil would bring in a song for us to learn. Why Don't They Let Us Fall in Love by Barry and Greenwich was the first one I remember practicing with Phil. We'd work on the harmonies and background vocals for an hour or so. Then Phil would send Nadra and Estelle home so he could work with me on the lead vocals in private. And it was during this private time that our romance began. Since I didn't read music, the only way I could learn a song was to go over and over it until I knew it by heart. So it would just be me and Phil sitting there, and he'd strum the song over and over again on his guitar while I read the lyrics, and there was something very sexy about that. I'd be looking into his eyes. Did you see the devil? I'd be looking into his eyes while he played guitar, and all of a sudden I'd feel like kissing him. You wanted to kiss the devil? Finally, one night after Estelle and Nadra had left, I was right in the middle of a verse when Phil stopped strumming long enough to ask, "Would you mind if I kissed you?" Go on and suck face with the devil. When Phil was finally ready to record Why Don't They Let Us Fall in Love, he flew my mother and me to California for the session. But for some reason, Nadra and Estelle followed us a few days later by car. They drove out with Bobby Sheen, who was the lead singer of Bobby B. Sox and the Blue Jeans, one of the other groups Phil had under contract. It took them 5 days to get across the country in Bobby's brand new 1963 Chevrolet station wagon, and they were all miserable by the time they got to California. Nadra and Estelle were furious because the dude Bobby was like, "No, we gonna drive straight through. Ain't nobody got time for you and your fucking makeup." By the time they got to California, the girls looked like they'd been in a horror film. But they got over it. But they forgave him pretty quickly. And we ended up staying with Bobby and his family in this big old 3-story house they had in LA. I think the reason Phil loved our enthusiasm so much is because it came close to matching his own. I never stopped being amazed at how fanatical Phil was about every detail of what went on in the studio. I think us girls from the hood, part of our obsession with the biggest, baddest drug dealer on the block, I guess my obsession would be that I would be amazed at how they're able to keep all the different parts going effectively until the FBI come in. Okay, you watching a nigga for 3 years, you don't know that the FBI is watching his ass too. I did love this guy. From the first minute I saw him, I couldn't wait to have his kids. He wasn't conventionally handsome, but the Rock Hudson type never impressed me anyway. When we returned from California, the Wrnedes were right back to work. Even though our Coldplay singles had all flopped, we were always in demand as a live group. By 1963, all three of us were out of high school and playing with rock and roll variety shows. When we returned from California, the Wrnedes went right back to work. Even though our Coldplay singles had all flopped, we were always in demand as a live group. In that long stretch before Be My Baby, our live shows were the only place our fans could hear us. Even after Phil recorded our first song out in California, he refused to release it. When I asked when will the song be coming out, he answered without missing a beat, "Never. Never."
Oh, my life.